Hello and welcome to Frank Fridays. My name is Karline Moeller and I'm the founder of Art Frankly. And I'd like to introduce my co-host, Ellie Hayworth of Hayworth Art Consultancy, which is a art consultancy committed to promoting intrepid ideas in both art and design. Joining us today is Hannah Gottlieb-Graham, a communications specialist with a photography background. She is based in New York. Hannah is also the founder of ALMA Communications, and we are excited to learn more about what she's got going on today. Ellie, over to you.
Amazing. Thank you, Karlina and Hannah. I'm super excited to chat with you today.
Same.
It's going to be great. So Hannah, maybe we can start with just getting kind of a lay of the land. As Karlina mentioned, you founded ALMA Communications, and from what I know, you started very squarely in kind of the photography and photo book sector, but you really kind of expanded your purview to a broad genre of different kind of arts and culture initiatives. Maybe you can just start by telling us, how did you get involved with the arts and a little bit more about your career path?
Yeah, absolutely. So not a lot of people know about the way that I kind of entered the art world. And I've been sort of sharing this story a lot more in the last 2 years since starting my company. But I actually started out by dancing semi-professionally. I was in ballet, grew up in Chicago, was part of a company, and was planning on moving to New York to go to Juilliard, and was going to be a professional ballet dancer. That was the whole thing. And I was very seriously injured when I was 16 and kind of had to reevaluate my life path, which was really tough. I mean, I spent a year in the hospital and just kind of had to start from ground zero. And photography is something that I found. My grandfather was a photographer and ended up bringing me a bunch of his old film cameras and kind of gifted them to me to discover a new creative outlook. I was eating pudding and watching Real Housewives and just feeling really sorry for myself at 17, just was very directionless. So I started making self-portraits and documenting my spine. I ruptured 2 discs in my back, so kind of had to get my whole back overhauled, and took a lot of self-portraits of my recovery process and really fell in love with photography. From there, I ended up working with Elizabeth Biondi, who was the first female photo director at The New Yorker, which was an amazing experience. She was a woman identified kind of a skill in communications. We were working with her archive, and I was working with a lot of photographers and doing a lot of the communication back and forth. So it was kind of managing things from a comms point of view. And she was like, you know what, you should work in an agency. So I started out at Third Eye, which is really where I met Ellie. She was one of my very first bosses. So great.
I enjoyed it. And it's coming full circle these days, Hannah.
Yeah, I know. And then I bopped around at a bunch of other agencies and kind of, to be perfectly honest, had a tough time of things. I mean, Third Eye was a really great, tight group. I ended up working at some larger firms and felt like there was a lot of competition and sort of weird jealousy, and the traditional PR landscape can be just very challenging, but felt frustrated by that because I really loved what I was doing. And then finally ended up house role at the Aperture Foundation. So kind of went back to photography, and I managed the communications department, did the press for the book program, the magazine, and exhibitions, and was able to really lean into things there. It's a very small team, so I kind of ran the department. And then just naturally decided I really wanted to do my own firm and kind of make a firm that felt really personal and holistic and a lot different than some of my previous agency experience. And I think that my dance background has brought me a lot of patience and grit and hard work. And I've been sharing that with folks lately because I think it's actually really kind of informed where I ended up.
Yeah. I mean, I think the story just generally is quite incredible. And I think there's a lot that resonates, certainly as kind of a fellow female entrepreneur. One of the things I think that you and I probably shared was this kind of need for more creative liberty and creative freedom that was not necessarily encouraged in a lot of the agency environments, for better or for worse. They do great work for what they do with their clients. But I'm curious, I think when you speak to fellow entrepreneurs, there's an interesting conversation around what that kind of inflection point was, or what that moment was that kind of pushed them to turn independent. Can you speak a little bit to that moment when you realized you were prepared, and also you had kind of built up the confidence and the skill set to do so?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I started, I will say I was not prepared. But I did have confidence. So sometimes you have one or the other, sometimes you have both. Sometimes you have neither and you just kind of go for it, just like pure whim. I developed that confidence, I think, at Aperture. And one project in particular that really like very, very inspired me, the New Black Vanguard, which was Antoine Sargent's book. And we worked with so many young photographers, some of which, you know, were still in college when they appeared in the book. And it's been really incredible to see the career trajectories that have come to publication and the way that it's toured internationally. And collaborating with that, there was just something very special about that project that I feel like we were working with so many young folks who just kind of went for it, and they were shooting covers, or, you know, being published left and right, kind of answering to no one essentially. And it gave me a lot of confidence to kind of move things onward on my own. I mean, was I prepared? I think confidence can sometimes, like, you can mask preparation with confidence.
Sure.
And I essentially like quit my job to work with Antoine and just was like, let's see what comes of this. So an interesting point came when I think like 6 to 8 months in, I sort of realized that I'd gone from being a little bit of like a freelance publicist to working with friends and cohorts and kind of working on referral and working with like 3 to 6 clients to actually kind of running a company. So that change happened quickly. And then I realized I needed to kind of, you know, figure my shit out to like scale and hire the right people and get things working in a business perspective that made sense, because I don't have a business background. My parents are writers. I went to an art school. I used to dance. Like, idea what I was doing.
Well, and I was going to say, I think that's certainly a challenge. I think a lot of fellow kind of arts professional space, we certainly, I think a lot of us are encouraged to hone our eye and hone our relationships. And, you know, we're all, I would like to think by definition, empaths. So there is, I think, a high EQ, but sometimes the kind of the business quotient is not honed in the same way in the art world. But I don't know. I mean, I can attest, just knowing you both professionally and personally, you know, I think you do learn through experience. And so I've appreciated seeing how you've grown your company. And I think this is actually a great segue. One of the questions I wanted to pose, I know you're a growing team. You now are, you know, at the helm of a company that has, you know, fellow strong women in the arts working with you. I'm curious what qualities or what, you know, what kind of decision making went into building out your team, because those are critical decisions when you're starting out.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I think, like I said earlier, I sort of hit a point where I needed to let go of the superwoman complex, which I think comes with a lot of female founders. Do everything ourselves, you know, I can only do it this way. And I think it took me a while to really be able to not only ask for help, but like actually like in an actionable way.
Like lean into it. Yeah.
Yeah. And like let somebody do the work that I hired them to do, because it's tough to let go of control when it's your baby and no one's quite going to do. But it's been amazing to see how the team's been able to grow, and just how kind of giving somebody independence can really foster incredible flourishing, the way that I was able to receive it at Aperture. I will say the 2 women I've hired, Sarah and Michelle, are incredible and have very different work backgrounds, none of which are in PR, which I think that's been important to me, just kind of keeping in line with me wanting this firm to feel sort of like the antithesis of a more traditional firm. I'm more interested in kind of like life experience, intelligence, quickness, wit, good writing skills, speed, understanding, good people skills, just a lot of things that don't necessarily come from like a degree in marketing and communications and like 3 other PR firms that I'm very well aware of in New York. I'm really interested in like an eclectic background.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a very astute way to go about building a business. And again, I like go back to relationships, but I do think, this is a very high touch industry and art is very personal. So I think you need to trust that both your team members as well as the agency you employ is doing so with utmost care and and a little like intellectual. I liked the word wit. I thought that was great.
Yeah.
You have to enjoy working with the people that you're building, your career around.
Yeah, no, we do team dinners and hang out. That's also like a great thing that comes from just feeling like really personally supported by your team. Like it's not you.
Yeah, no, I love it. Hannah, are there any kind of current or future projects that you would want the Art Frankly audience to be aware of? Is there maybe a project you want to speak to that would be interesting to us today?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're working on book projects right now that are, since leaving Aperture, we've worked with like a bunch of individual artists, some galleries, some books, and working on book projects is something that I will always love doing, just with my parents being writers and having a background in the publishing world. So we work with Prestel, they're a client, and they kind of blog every couple months, and I get a book that I want to work on, which has been—
I love that.
I know. So we're doing the launch right now of Nadine book. She was actually in the New Black Vanguard, and this is her first solo monograph, and it's absolutely stunning. It was just released in the UK, and it's going to be out in December. And then next spring, we're also, just to look ahead, working on the press for Campbell Addy's first monograph with Prestel. And he is another incredible photographer from the New Black Vanguard who's also UK based. So they're stunning. I love working on the book projects, and that's been really, really exciting.
That's great. We'll definitely kind of stay tuned on all things ALMA, and Art Frankly's audience is always quite hungry for new things to sink their teeth into. So we can certainly help, kind of spread the word both through the Frank Talk and the other platforms. Hannah, we like to round out these interviews with some professional practice questions. So I'm curious, if you were to give a word of advice to kind of the next generation of arts professional, what would you impart? Like, what do you think is kind of critical for the new, an aspiring arts professional?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one without thinking about a specific industry, but in general, I would just say trust your gut. I think now more than ever, like me, if a project doesn't feel quite right, have like a new business call and something's just not feeling like it's super aligned with your current client list or your mission, even if it's a lot of money, even if it seems like it's a good move, or it's like a connector, or it might build things long term, if it doesn't feel right, I would say walk away from it. It's, in like a professional and courteous and polite way, but trust your instincts, and trust your gut regardless of what you do. I think being able to really be confident in your decision-making skills and trust your instincts is very important.
Yeah. And I also think that segues back to kind of the idea of not being a freelancer, but being a company. And so building a mission and building kind of a stable, if you will, of clients that all feed off of each other and synergize. I think that's actually critical advice. So that's a great one. What would you say is one thing that you do every day in your professional world that really helps sustain your business?
You know what? I will actually say one thing I do in the non-professional world that helps sustain business is that I try to go on a walk or work out every day. I know that's
we share that, Hannah.
It is so important, honestly. It really changes my mood. I mean, I am on this damn computer sitting 400 a day, all day, every day, even on the weekends. It's just like that sometimes when you run a business, but being able to have some time for yourself to get a good night of sleep, which to be honest, I don't always do, but I always wake up to like get coffee, go on a walk, have a little bit of me time, go on a run, go to yoga, like get on my bike. And not everybody is a workout person, but for me, that's something that I think is really, really important, whether it's 20 minutes or a full hour. I definitely am somebody who tries to practice self-care. Even if it seems like I'm working constantly, I am somebody who needs a little bit of self-care in my life. And I think it makes my business better and be a better partner and a better boss.
Yeah. I think sometimes prioritizing whatever it is that kind of declutters your mind in the end actually fuels your work ethic and it fuels your creativity. So I think that's a very valuable insight. And again, I think we kind of like to round out with a similar question. So I've been posing this to everybody. We are, approaching a world that feels somewhat normal. We are, the art world is active again. There's certainly activity out in the world. What is one thing that you were looking forward to?
I've been really excited to get back to fairs. I feel like art might be insane this year, but I'm excited to
I agree with that statement, Hannah.
And I also just joined the Guggenheim YCC group, which has been really lovely. And we organized a tour of one of my client, Nicola Basel Gallery's current show. So that's been really fun and just been nice to like actually meet people face to face. I mean, I don't know about you, but I used to do like actual lunches and coffees with journalists and really get to know them. And it's been really nice to do that again, to join a group like YCC that's not just doing, like a monthly Zoom, to really like go to studio visits and meet artists and just see folks again in whatever way I can, whether it's a fair or a coffee with a writer, or joining a group like that. So just the simple things of getting to build relationships, because it really is a relationship business.
Yeah. I certainly share in that enthusiasm. So I too am looking forward to continuing to kind of be back in the world and be in kind of the swirl again. So it should be fun. Well, Hannah, this has been great. I always love chatting with you. But I appreciate that you took the time today to speak with us.
Thank you for having me. So fun.